Section 3. The Rejection of Monkish Virtues. Let us review Hume's rejection of the monkish virtues in the inquiry. We want to be sure to give his idea a fair and sympathetic reading. By the conclusion of the inquiry, Hume has established that every quality which is useful or agreeable to ourselves or others is, in common life, allowed to be a part of personal merit. Any quality which is not useful or agreeable will never be counted as a virtue by sensible people who operate without the delusive glosses of superstition and false religion. This forms the putative basis for Hume's attack. He pronounces celibacy, fasting, penance, mortification, self-denial, humility, silence, solitude, and the whole train of monkish virtues. For what reason are they everywhere rejected by men of sense, but because they serve to no manner of purpose, neither advance a man's fortune in the world, nor render him a more valuable member of society, neither qualify him for the entertainment of company, nor increase his power of self-enjoyment. We observe, on the contrary, that they cross all these desirable ends, stupefy the understanding and harden the heart, obscure the fancy and sour the temper. We justly, therefore, transfer them to the opposite column and place them in the catalogue of vices. Nor has any superstition force been sufficient among men of the world to pervert entirely these natural sentiments. Some preliminary observations. First, it is worth noting that Hume's remarks about these would-be virtues have nothing in particular to do with monks or with people living a life inspired by religion. Natural though it is that Hume should associate this cluster of qualities with religious characters known to him, the point is broader than such an association would allow. Non-religious people may at times approve of solitude, silence, and the rest. Second, we are given no reason to think that the qualities labeled monkish naturally belong together, form a train, or constitute a system of morality, as one recent writer suggests. It is true that monkish qualities can cling to one another, in a manner of speaking. Celibacy might be easier to sustain if one were also to embrace solitude, and fasting could be one handy form of self-denial. But we are not dealing with a moral system, in the sense something that could imaginably compete with Hume's system. What Hume would understand by a moral system is a reflective philosophical account of what morality is, such as the one presented by Hobbes or Hutcheson, not some particular collection of practices or propensities. With the qualities termed monkish, we have a mere collage of would-be virtues. Of course, Hume's system should accommodate whatever is truly of value in such a collage, even if it has been assembled by monks. Third, the list indicates a variety of practices which would not ordinarily be considered virtues or vices, although one might engage the latter in pursuing such practices. A person can be silent in many ways, for instance, as a punishment or treat for one's spouse. A particular silence might be petty and vengeful, another sweet and thoughtful. We would have to examine the particulars of the case before allowing ourselves any moral reaction. Hume's rejection of this cluster of qualities is prompted by the idea that they go against the whole flow of normal human life. If he is right, then these qualities really do harden the heart and sour the temper. It is a small wonder that they have no place in a morality based on principles of humanity and sympathy. But there are questions of fact here. Let it be granted that some people, perhaps monks who prize celibacy, fasting, silence, solitude, and the rest, also have hardened hearts and sour tempers, stupefied understandings, and obscured fancies. We find them to be gloomy, delirious, and dismal. But what causes what? In the inquiry discussion, Hume does not provide evidence that the practice of celibacy, or solitude, say, occurs prior to the hardening of a heart or a souring of temper. It is just as easy to imagine the reverse linkage where a sour temper and a hard heart produce solitude and celibacy. We need some further argument or evidence, which it appears we will have to supply for ourselves or find in some other arena. In the next section, we will scan a broader selection of Hume's writings in a search for clues to his thought. First, though, we should examine some purely philosophical ways of defending Hume's condemnation of the monkish virtues. The reflexivity test. One possibility is that Hume is tacitly depending on a reflexivity test for identifying would-be virtues. Annette Bayard claims that the whole of the treatise searches for mental operations that can bear their own survey, sorting those that can, causal reasoning in its naturalistic and non-metaphysical employment, virtues and the moral sentiment which discerns them, from those that get into manifest contradictions or self-destructive conflict when turned on themselves. Consider the application of this test to virtues and vices. Bayard proposes that humility as a virtue faces a paradox, namely that the very approval of it seems to threaten to destroy the thing approved. Pride in due pride presents no paradox, and neither does shame for shame. But pride in shame and shame for pride are at best unstable, degenerate cases of reflexivity. The paradox alluded to here arises if we think of humility as a kind of self-hatred or a sense of one's own baseness, so that approval of it would tend to make us like ourselves better or think ourselves less base, thereby destroying to some extent the target of our approval. The snake eats its tail. At first blush, the reflexivity test seems promising, but it proves difficult to apply in many instances. For one thing, it does not work at all with many traits of interest. There is no evident way to apply politeness to itself, nor bravery, celibacy, silence, and so forth. Another problem looms when we ask in which circumstances we might cogently raise the right sort of question. Suppose a man is obviously proud of his daughter's thoughtfulness and kind heart. Can we confront him with our question, "In this instance, are you proud of being proud of your daughter?" Do we really suppose that he should, upon reflection, be able to answer affirmatively? While it is true that our question does not provoke a paradox, at the same time it does not make any obvious sense. We should expect a rebuff from the proud father or sheer puzzlement. In the actual run of life, our reflexivity question would be a strange one indeed. How then are we to understand Hume's interest in reflexivity? At the conclusion of Book 3 of the treatise, Hume does say that according to his philosophy, not only virtue must be approved of, but also the sense of virtue, and not only that sense, but also the principles from whence it is derived, so that nothing is presented on any side but what is laudable and good. He is implicitly contrasting his own philosophy with those who would not glean approval all the way down, for example, those that would derive morality from a selfish impulse. His own view has a pleasing advantage. When we are pondering the merits of different philosophical pictures of morality, we will be surely drawn to the beauty of the account based on sympathy. But the present point is that little or nothing in the observation does or should feed through to moral practice or to our business of identifying virtues and vices. The reflexivity is a feather in the cap of a philosophy, but that is all. The self-other parity principle. Here is another possible slant on our topic. It seems pretty clear that Hume does endorse a principle of self-other parity, according to which a quality independently deemed of value necessarily causes love or pride as it is realized interchangeably in other or self. Many passages in Hume's ethical writings reflect this idea. For example, he writes that these two particulars are to be considered as equivalent with regard to our mental qualities: virtue and the power of producing love or pride, vice and the power of producing humility or hatred. In every case, therefore, we must judge of the one by the other, and may pronounce any quality of the mind virtuous which can cause love or pride, and any one vicious which causes hatred or humility. If this principle is sound, it may prove helpful in determining whether any quality is a virtue or otherwise. Underlying this parity principle, I suggest, is a fundamental belief in the objectivity of value, the goodness or badness of anything or any quality that is the same for all of us. That is why a given quality will cause love and pride depending on where it is placed, in another person or in oneself. So whatever we say regarding a particular quality, it must be admitted to apply to others as well. If I am proud of my own frugality, for instance, I should love or admire that quality in others as well. By a natural leap of the thought, someone might form the idea that the parity principle suggests that a person will only approve of a particular quality in another if he finds those same qualities in himself. And along these lines, Hume does say that men naturally, without reflection, approve of that character which is most like their own. No doubt there is an element of psychological truth in this observation, but would we want to recommend it as a device for identifying virtue? Annette Bayer seems to flirt with the idea when she remarks, "To be facetious, the circularity of appealing to the survey and judgment of cheerful, friendly, wit-loving people to get approval of cheerfulness, friendliness, and wit seems to be taken by Hume to be a wholly virtuous circularity." We would have to be facetious here, for such circularity is surely not virtuous, and it seems doubtful that Hume would seriously endorse it. If this were Hume's stance, we could dismiss his blunt attack on the monkish as circular and question-begging. The suggestion would be that he appeals to cheerful, fun-loving people for an assessment of silent, solitary monkish fellows, and that hardly seems fair. But we do not yet have the whole story. Our tendency to approve of the character most like our own reflects the operation of an immediate sympathy, and it is admittedly powerful. We do enter with more warmth into such sentiments and feel more sensibly the pleasure which arises from them. However, further experience and reflection can expand our sphere of approval and may even prompt departures from the parity principle. Suppose I hire a bodyguard to protect me from a stalker. The bodyguard is ferocious, courageous, hypervigilant, and prone to violence. I love him for these qualities. That is, I esteem him as a virtuous warrior. In this case, I would not be proud to have those same qualities attributed to me. I want to be gentle, mild-mannered, and somewhat absent-minded. There's the rub. Suppose I attend a monk at his cloister, watching as he enters the third day of his fasting, suffering his hunger in silence as he sits alone in some dark room. I realize, let us allow that this monk is highly regarded and loved by his narrow circle of associates. Certainly I do not want to join them. I am not drawn to them. I would not be proud to display their form of life as my own. However, I would have to say the same of the present-day Amish community of Pennsylvania, and I know that social psychologists report that Amish routinely test as among the happiest people in the nation. On Hume's showing, it seems clear that I have to approve of them. I have to allow that what they count as virtue, a form of life that does without modern conveniences and that strikes me as constrained and narrow, is entirely legitimate.